Jeremi, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so glad to be here.
So to start, walk us through your title and how you're involved at ASEE.
Sure. So I am an associate professor of engineering education in the Department of Engineering Education at Virginia Tech. And within ASEE, I am the chair of CDEI. CDEI stands for the Commission for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And one of the ways in which I think about the commission versus a division is that divisions bring people together, commissions bring divisions together. So they are issues that do not affect a particular division, like diversity, but something that brings together all of its members.
So what is ASEE doing to promote racial equity in engineering education?
Yeah, so one of the most recent initiatives of ASEE was championed by CDEI over the last year, specifically the Year of Impact on Racial Equity. And that was a three-pronged initiative that took place over the last year. At this conference, we're celebrating all of the highlights of that. So there was this desire to start to engage stakeholders that we don't normally talk to when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when we think about diversity issues, we go straight to faculty or we go straight to administrators and say, make change happen. And I think that there's a role for that. And one of the three pillars was focused on faculty and administrators. But the other two pillars are focused on students, which is a group of people we don't normally talk to when we think about diversity issues, and parents and guardians of K-12 children. And so our goal was to try to be more inclusive, even in our approach to wrestling with racial equity issues within ASEE.
It sounds like it qualifies as one of ASEE's successes.
Yeah.
So tell me about what successes has ASEE seen in their racial equity efforts in that context.
Yeah, sure. So in the K-12 pillar, there was this interest on trying to figure out how do we raise awareness about the variety of things that ASEE members are already doing in terms of engineering outreach. Because year after year, like people are putting on programs and they're inviting speakers, they're doing all kinds of stuff. Yet we don't see the participation of Black and brown children at the same levels as majority students. And so their focus was on raising awareness of existing outreach efforts. And so what they did was two cool things. One, they created an interactive map. And on the map is to show parents and guardians where there's an outreach effort near me. It was populated by ASEE members, and we're still accepting submissions, but so that people can begin to see that there's all kinds of stuff going on around me. So the goal wasn't to create new outreach efforts, but to raise awareness of existing ones and to put it on a map. But then the second thing was to start to hear, what is it like to be a student, an engineering student, like from the voices of students. And so they created a series of videos and a social media campaign so that engineering students could talk about like what's it like to live in a dorm and what's it like to take engineering classes, but not from like some stale professor. Like they could hear from like actual students that look like them about like what it's like. And so that was the really cool highlights, like the interactive map and the social media campaign organized around these student-led videos was like the successes of that particular pillar.
Do you see any hardships continuing that you're working on currently addressing right now? I mean, it sounds like that's a long-term goal when you're talking about white supremacy that's baked into the engineering culture.
I know, that's right. So what I think I'm most inspired by, and I think about like in terms of what hardships are we continuing to address, is one, the naming of this initiative was intentional. So a few years ago, ASEE had a year of action on diversity. But this year was the year of impact. And we were trying to make sure that we do things that have really concrete, tangible outcomes, things that are observable. And so like the notion of realizing that Black and brown children don't participate in engineering outreach efforts, which is usually the context in which you can even develop confidence in engineering, interest in engineering, awareness of career paths, like that, all kinds of stuff happens if you just get there. Like that's still a hindrance. And so like realizing that the interactive map will keep going, and there's conversations about how this could be picked up by ASEE as one of its signatures, such that it could become automatic. Sometimes students make decisions about whether I'm fit or not based on things that happen between interactions with their peers. And so I was moved by the fact that like some of the student teams said this challenge helped us to have conversations that we didn't want to have or that we've kind of been deferring. So even like students starting to realize that we can talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in our little sphere, like our local chapter, like how can we make change happen?
Well, Jeremi, thank you so much for sharing all these details about the Year of Impact. It's been a great pleasure, and we appreciate your time.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.